My name is Gianna, and I'm 29 years old. I stare at the bank statement in my hands, my inheritance account, drained to zero. Across from me, Grace, my mother-in-law, slides my late father's company badge toward my sister-in-law with a smug smile. The company needs a proper leader, she says, her words cutting like glass. She doesn't know about the secret account my father left me. I should have seen this coming. The signs were there from the moment I married Lucas 5 years ago. Grace had always treated our family company, the $50 million tech empire my dad built from scratch, like it was her personal kingdom. Gianna, darling, Grace says, her voice dripping with condescension. Your father was a visionary, but his judgment wasn't what it used to be. Putting you in charge of the company's finances. You can't even manage your own budget. I dig my nails into the armrest, willing myself to stay calm. Across the sleek mahogany table, Stella, my sister-in-law, sits preening in a tailored power suit that screams status, the same Stella who ran her boutique into bankruptcy just last year. The board agrees, Grace continues, sliding a legal document across the table. Your father's succession plan was flawed. Thankfully, we've corrected it. My mind races. This started the moment Dad's casket hit the ground. The closed-door board meeting I wasn't invited to. The routine IT audit that locked me out of the system. And now this. This is illegal, I say, forcing steel into my voice. Dad left me controlling interest in the company. I have the paperwork. Had the paperwork, Stella interrupts, her smirk razor-sharp. Funny how things disappeared during office renovations, isn't it? The renovations. Last weekend. While I was at Dad's lake house sorting through his belongings. Grace had insisted on modernizing the executive floor, a convenient excuse to box up my office after a flood caused by a conveniently broken water cooler. Don't be dramatic, Grace says, patting my hand like I'm a child. We're family. We'd never leave you out in the cold. You'll keep your job in accounts payable, it's where you belong. My phone buzzes in my pocket. A text from James, Dad's old lawyer. Don't sign anything. Check your email immediately. I need time to review these, I say, rising from the chair. The board meets in an hour, Grace snaps, her mask of civility slipping. This will be resolved today. As I head for the door, Stella's voice cuts through the air. Oh, Gianna. We'll need the keys to Dad's estate. As CEO, I'll be moving in. I pause, my grip tightening on the doorframe. Dad's voice echoes in my mind. Remember the chess player who always won. Sometimes you lose a few pieces to win the game. What Grace and Stella don't know is that Dad didn't just teach me accounting, he taught me to think 3 moves ahead. I step into the elevator, my fingers curling around the small silver key Dad slipped me just before he died. First National Bank. Box 2317. When the time comes, you'll know what to do. The safety deposit box at First National Bank feels heavier than it should in my hands. My fingers tremble slightly as I insert Dad's key, his voice echoing in my mind. In business, Gianna, always have a backup plan for your backup plan. Inside, I find a sealed envelope, a USB drive, and a small leather notebook. What freezes me in place, though, is a handwritten letter, dated 3 days before Dad passed. My dearest Gianna. If you're reading this, Grace has made her move. She never forgave me for naming you my successor instead of Stella. The $2 million she stole, that was bait. The real inheritance is in the Cayman Islands. Account details are in the encrypted files on this drive. More importantly, check the security footage from my home office for the past month. Grace and Stella have been having some interesting midnight meetings. Love, Dad. My phone buzzes again. Another text from James. Grace called an emergency board meeting for 3 p.m. Also, your husband's been asking questions about the company's offshore accounts. Lucas. My stomach twists. How deep does this betrayal run? I plug the USB drive into my laptop, my fingers moving automatically to type the password I've known since childhood, the name of Dad's first company. Files flood the screen. Bank statements. Recordings. Emails. And a folder labeled insurance. Oh my God, I whisper, scrolling through document after damning document. Grace and Stella hadn't just stolen my inheritance. They'd been embezzling company funds for years. And Dad, brilliant as ever, had been collecting evidence the whole time. A security camera alert pings on my phone. Movement detected in Dad's home office. Pulling up the live feed. I watch as Stella rifles through the desk drawers, her movements frantic. Grace stands by the door, keeping watch. It has to be here somewhere, Stella hisses. The old man must have kept records of the Cayman accounts. Grace's voice is sharp. Keep looking. Once we find those accounts, we can transfer everything before the little princess figures it out. Lucas' voice cuts in. She hasn't checked her father's safety deposit box yet. My husband. My throat tightens. He's been in on this too. I start recording the live feed, my hand steady now. On the screen, Stella pulls open a drawer, her face lighting up with a triumphant grin. There, she says, holding up a folder. Proof Camilla's been stealing from the company. Once I forge her signature on these documents, it'll look airtight. I've seen enough. I dial James, barely waiting for him to answer. Gianna, he says quickly. Please tell me you've got something. The time has come. Oh, I have everything, I reply, my eyes locked on the live feed as Grace and Stella walk out of Dad's office with his stolen documents. Dad knew this was coming. He left a trail of breadcrumbs, and they just walked straight into his trap. The board meeting is in 2 hours, James reminds me. Perfect, I say, downloading the final files. That's all the time I need. Call Agent Sanders at the FBI. Apparently, Dad had several chats with her about potential corporate fraud. And James, make sure every board member is there. They won't want to miss this. As I gather the evidence, Dad's voice echoes in my mind, his favorite piece of advice resurfacing. The best revenge isn't served cold, sweetheart. It's served with irrefutable proof and federal witnesses. They wanted to play chess. Fine. But they forgot one crucial detail. I was trained by the Grandmaster. The conference room hums with quiet tension as the board members settle in. At the head of the table, Grace sits with a calculated air of authority, Stella smugly seated to her right. Lucas stands awkwardly near the door, avoiding my eyes. His guilt is written all over his face. For a brief moment, I almost laugh. Almost. Grace rises, her voice ringing out. Before we begin, I'd like to thank you all for attending this emergency meeting. We are here to discuss Gianna's questionable fitness to lead this company. Actually, I cut in, stepping into the room. James flanks me on one side, 2 FBI agents on the other. We're here to address corporate fraud, embezzlement, and conspiracy. The color drains from Grace's face. Stella's smirk falters. Lucas stiffens. What is this nonsense? Grace demands, though her voice wavers. I set my laptop down, connecting it to the projector with deliberate calm. Let's start with something straightforward. Last night's security footage. You'll find it enlightening. Especially the part where you discuss forging my signature. Silence falls over the room as the video begins to play. Grace's and Stella's voices echo through the room, crystal clear, outlining their scheme to frame me, their theft of company funds, their partnership with Lucas. This is doctored. Stella sputters, her confidence crumbling. Like you doctored these? I ask, sliding the stolen folder across the table. You might recognize these documents from my father's office, the ones you plan to use to frame me. By the way, Dad installed cameras everywhere after catching you trying to hack his computer last year. Grace stands abruptly, her face flushed with anger. This is preposterous. I am the acting co. Actually, James interjects smoothly, you're not. The board vote last week is invalid because you failed to notify all shareholders. Specifically, the majority shareholder. I pull another document from my briefcase, my voice steady. You see, Grace, that $2 million you stole. Dad knew you'd try something like this. It was bait. Meanwhile, he quietly transferred controlling interest to an offshore holding company. One that I've owned since my 25th birthday. The FBI agent steps forward, her voice firm. Miss Walker, we have a warrant to seize all company computers and financial records. We also have evidence of wire fraud across state lines. Grace stares at me, her power slipping through her fingers. Lucas, she whispers desperately. Tell them. But Lucas doesn't move. He just stands there, caught in the spotlight of his own betrayal. Gianna, I can explain, he starts, his voice thin. Save it for your lawyer, I cut him off coldly. Oh, and Lucas. Consider this notice, I'll be filing for divorce. The next hour is a blur. FBI agents swarm the building, confiscating files and computers. Handcuffs click as Grace and Stella are escorted out, their protests growing weaker with every step. Stella's expensive suit looks far less impressive as she's led away, and Grace's once commanding presence dissolves into frantic pleas. Later, I sit in Dad's old office, my office now. The leather notebook he left me lies open on the desk. On the final page, his handwriting is firm and deliberate. Remember, sweetheart. Success isn't just about making money. It's about seeing the whole board, and having the courage to make the hard moves when it counts. I look out over the city skyline, thinking of everything Dad taught me. Grace and Stella thought they were playing chess. But they never understood the most important rule. Before you go after the king, make sure you've accounted for all the pieces. The company is safe now. Dad made sure of that. And as for the $2 million they stole, consider it the cost of unmasking their schemes. Sometimes, losing a battle wins you the war. My phone buzzes. A text from James. Board approved your reorganization plan. Everyone's behind you now. I smile to myself, the weight of the past week finally beginning to lift. Dad's final lesson echoes in my mind. The best leaders don't just survive attempts to destroy them. They use those attempts to become stronger. Looking out at the city below, I murmur. Checkmate, Grace. This one's for you, Dad.